Okay, well, welcome to the Tribe Digital Marketing Series. Today, I'm joined by Drew Smith, who is an engagement manager on our revenue operations team. Drew, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
Well, based on the role that you've taken on in the last 5-6 years, this very heavy in data analytics and marketing operations, what do you see that people should be doing right now in that time when the traditional marketing levers can't be pulled?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question, Josh. So the biggest thing that I'm going to talk about is the thing that I always talk about, and that is reporting.
Okay.
There's never been a better time for marketers to be able to prove their value and prove their worth to the organization than right now. I've lived through now this will be my third global recession that I've worked through in my professional career. And the consistent thread through all of those is that marketing has always been considered as a cost center in almost every organization on the planet. And so when we go into a global recession and CEOs and boards of directors start looking at where they're going to start cutting costs, marketing is usually one of the ones that is looked at front and center and early on because they're considered to be a cost center. So if marketing right now can prove that you are a profit center as opposed to a cost center, and you can prove that for every dollar that marketing spends, you're returning $5, $6, $20 in revenue, then that is the best way for marketers to be able to protect their budget and, quite frankly, protect people's jobs.
I mean, that all sounds great in theory, right? I mean,
yeah,
I agree with you. So what are the blockers to that becoming a reality?
basically data and process.
Okay.
Process creates data. So if you have the right process that allows you to be able to track every dollar that you spend back to people and opportunities and pipeline and sales and bookings, then you have the ability to do that work and be able to get to that ROI number. But the problem is most people don't have the process, and most people therefore don't have the data. So you have to have a solid process. My philosophy of marketing has always been that if you can't track it, you shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
And that means we may have to get creative in the ways that we're tracking it. I mean, if you think of like traditional PR or branding, like how do you track those things? There's ways to do it. You just have to get creative, but you have to be able to quantify and track every dollar that you're spending back to hopefully a person and pipeline and sales.
Yeah. So I wonder then, if we take a look forward approach, which I think most people are probably going to try to do, as opposed to investing heavily in a look back approach. Technically, it should be easier to track the return or the impact on digital efforts than your traditional event-based efforts. Is that a true or a false statement?
It's easier to track in theory, but there are still process elements that a lot of organizations get wrong that prevent you from being able to do it. So for example, the use of UTM parameters. UTM parameters make every single digital touch trackable, but the percentage of organizations that use UTM parameters is probably around 1/3.
Wow.
And the percentage of those that are doing it well in a way that is reportable, consistent, and easy to understand from a reporting standpoint is probably about 1/3 of those people.
In a simplified world, what are the top 2-3 things that marketers should be making sure that they have in place in order to make sure that's impactful, that they make impact on that spend, to track, measure?
The number one thing you have to do is, again, UTM or URL parameters.
Okay.
You need to have before you spend another dollar on pull up your Google AdWords, look at your source and medium. Those are the two most important, source and medium. See what you have. Is your data consistent? Is it normalized? Is it understandable? If it is, you're in great shape. If it's not, you need to scrap it, start over.
Okay.
Get it to a place where it's normalized and consistent. The third most important is the campaign parameter. The campaign parameter, specifically if you're using UTMs or whatever your custom parameter is that you use to track campaigns, is how you track a marketing campaign across multiple different digital platforms and strategies and tactics. So if I'm running like a product launch right now, and I'm going to do display ads, and I'm going to do paid search, and I'm going to do partners, I'm going to have links out on partner websites, and I'm going to do a whole bunch of different tactics. That campaign parameter is the way that you track that campaign across all of your different tactics. So you have to use that parameter wisely so that you can then track that back to that performance. Now, here's the most important part after that. Once you have that in place, you then have to have a back-end system like a marketing automation platform or Salesforce that can capture that information and track it back to a person. If you can't capture that information and track it back to a person, then all of that parameter data is stuck in Google Analytics and you can't see any money.
Got it. Okay.
So
what I'm hearing is your core baseline stack to make this at least have some ability to track and measure is Google Analytics, marketing automation, CRM.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
I think that's a skinny down version, but I think that's helpful probably for a lot of folks who may not have been traditionally investing as heavily in digital.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really step one in the maturity curve.
Yeah.
If you're already doing that, then you can start looking at step 2 and 3 and you know, getting into the little crawl, walk, run.
Absolutely.
Crawl, walk, run analogy.
Yep.
Like if you're already crawling, that's crawling. If you're already crawling, then start walking and running and sprinting and marathoning.
Yeah, then we can set up more time with you to dig into all that fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Now the one thing that I want to talk about real quick, Josh, is and I know this isn't one of the questions that you're asking, but a lot of people are looking at digital right now as the way to spend money.
Sure.
And that's true. That's a really good landing spot for that event budget that you used to have.
Right.
But what I want to challenge people to do is get creative about what they think about when into digital. If you're just pouring that extra money into things like display ads and paid search, you are going to hit a tipping point where incremental spend is not going to get you incremental results. Right? That's oversaturation point. So when you reach that oversaturation point, don't keep pouring money in. Where I want to see people start getting creative is like, you know, Josh, what you're doing right now.
Okay.
A lot of people should be looking into things like I'm challenging a lot of organizations that I work with to look into podcasts. Okay. So there are a lot of niche industry podcasts out there that are being hosted by folks in those industries that don't have any kind of advertising backing or backing from any of the leaders in those industries that could certainly use that backing, right? They could use that ad backing to amplify their podcast, to get their podcast out there more. And if you're one of those organizations that is looking for a home for some of that former in-person event budget, going that route might be a good idea. The other thing to think about is there are so many industries out there right now that don't have an industry podcast. So if you don't have an industry podcast, this might be the time for you to go create your industry podcast and start working with other thought leaders in your industry. That can open up doors to analysts. That can open up doors to media. That can open up doors to partnerships and partners in your industry that you aren't thinking about right now.
Absolutely.
Just expand that digital spend spectrum to include other portions of the spectrum outside of just display and paid search.
That's a great example. I've always been a believer that niche wins, and really going to the grassroots level and looking into those people who are filling those niches within your space could be a really impactful way, and probably, frankly, a low cost way to make an interesting impact.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to spend a lot of money on some niche podcaster in your industry that has tons of good content that just needs a little bit of amplification to get out there even wider.